Hello everybody and welcome to the Workplace Wellness Buffet. Today we're going to be talking about mental and physical wellness, and I'm going to hand you over now to Sophia, who's going to talk to us about suicide awareness and mental health first aid.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you very much for having me and for the introduction there, Victoria. Really happy to be part of the wellness buffet this week. It's been amazing. So for those of you that haven't actually watched any of the content this week, do go on and have a look at it. There's some amazing content there. But a big thank you for having me on this morning to talk about suicide awareness and mental health first aid. So I will introduce myself in a moment. Let's move forward. So what I will cover this morning is who I am, what is mental health, what influences our mental health, then go into suicide awareness, seeking support, and then ideas to sustain a healthy body and mind. So hopefully it won't be death by PowerPoint, but there's a lot of information that I want to share, and hopefully you'll find it useful as well. Before I start, I just wanted to share this lovely gentleman, Mark, who sadly is one of our fellow coaches, and the event has actually been put in place in memory of Mark. So I just wanted to put him in my presentation today, especially as a lot of the content I'll be discussing is obviously around mental health and well-being. And sometimes as coaches, we don't quite realise that, it is stressful on us and as well as everyone else as well. So I just wanted to kind of put Mark in here. And just a warning really as well for the rest of the presentation, as we are talking about mental health and suicide awareness. It's obviously a sensitive topic, and in some cases it may trigger certain feelings amongst obviously those of you that are watching. So I do just want to mention it, and if you do need to step away, then please do. Okay, so who am I then? So I'm Sophia Montagna. I am a relationship and breakup recovery coach, and also a mental health first aider. So a lot of my knowledge that I'll be sharing with you today is around the mental health first aid, and not about relationships and breakup recovery. However, elements of that naturally affect our mental health as well along the line. So it all kind of interlinks along the way, but I will be concentrating purely on mental health and suicide awareness for the session today. So what is mental health then? So mental health is not just the absence of a mental disorder. It's defined as a state of well-being in which every individual realizes his or her own potential, can cope with the normal stresses of life, and can work productively and fruitfully, and is able to make a contribution to her or his community. So our mental health is everything that we do, and generally there is a continuum. So on one side you've got good mental health, and then on the other side you've got poor mental health. And naturally, depending on what happens in our life, we will move up and down this continuum based on circumstances and things that we experience. So we all have mental health. It just depends on where we are on that continuum as to whether it's good or bad. In addition to that, there's something called mental ill health, and sometimes we get confused with what that is. So mental ill health is a mental illness, and it's diagnosable and treatable. It's a health condition which can be severe enough to disrupt everyday life. Okay, so it's just understanding the difference between mental health, which we all have, and then a mental illness is obviously a diagnosable and treatable health condition. So two very different things. So some mental health facts then here. About half of mental health disorders begin before the age of 14, which is surprising at such a really young age. And particularly now, we're seeing more and more people and young adults and children that are experiencing mental health concerns. So as it is getting lower and lower in age. Depression is one of the leading causes of disability, affecting 264 million people. And around 1 in 9 people in settings affected by conflict have a moderate or severe mental disorder. So it's very prevalent. Obviously, with everything we've gone through with COVID and the pandemic, it's severely impacted on so many different people in many different ways as well. So there's a lot more talk around it and a lot more awareness. So the type of mental illnesses, I just wanted to touch base on some of these. So depression. Depression is obviously those feelings of hopelessness, being unhappy generally, having low self-esteem, and just really being in not a great place at all within ourselves. Personality disorder, another popular one there, and that affects how we think, feel, and behave. So it can affect us in many different ways and make us think and feel certain things that might not necessarily be right or real, but we naturally just think about those on a more constant basis, which then affects our mental health. Anxiety disorders, so again, being anxious most of the time in whatever capacity that might be, just little things will just cause anxiety. Eating disorders around anorexia, bulimia, and generally binge eating. So there are certain individuals that do fluctuate on those scales. Psychosis, so this is where you will see and hear things that are not actually there. Namely hallucinations, essentially. And then you've got post-traumatic stress disorder. So someone has gone through a really traumatic event, and naturally post-event they are still experiencing the effects of that. So these are generally the main types of mental illnesses that you'll hear, that you may know of, maybe know someone that does have it. It's really important that we are able to diagnose these at an early stage so that individuals can get the support that they need to be able to overcome it, ideally. So the most common mental illness in the UK is a mixture of anxiety and depression. So 4 to 10% of people in England will experience depression in their life. And again, going back to those feelings of hopelessness, unhappiness, low self-esteem, just not feeling worthy. And as we go into suicide awareness, a lot of the factors that people that do feel suicidal will experience elements of depression. And anxiety, I mean, we may have experienced this ourselves to some extent, even if small, but things like headaches, too hot, cry and tears, can't give eye contact with other people, excess saliva, tingly hands, heart rate goes up, wobbly legs, tingly feet, wanting to escape, needing the toilet more, muscle tension, feeling sick, sound sensitivity, what if, so a lot of questions of what if this and what if that. So anxiety and depression really is a big one. And as I said, we're talking a lot more about it now. I think a lot more people are aware that they do have depression. And in most cases, they want to do something about it. And naturally, we would want to seek support and help for that. So just being mindful of those symptoms. So I mentioned earlier about the mental health continuum, and this is what it looks like. So at one end, you've got the green, which is you're excelling, everything's good, you're in a positive mental frame mind, positive mindset, everything's going well. And then going towards the latter end of the continuum, we're in crisis, where everything's just not really working out for us. We're in a rut. We might not be able to feel that we can get out of it. It might be that we've sought support, but actually it hasn't really helped, and we're stuck in a really bad place. So what does this look like then across the board? So when we're in crisis, we're very anxious. We've got a very low mood, absenteeism, particularly at work or maybe certain events that you're committed to. You're exhausted, very poor sleep, and you may lose weight. If you're struggling, you may again feel anxious, depressed, tired, poor performance, again, maybe in the workplace, poor sleep and poor appetite. Those that are surviving are maybe a little worried about certain things. Maybe at this time, for instance, it might be money worries, for instance, because of obviously the climate at the moment. Nervousness, might be a little irritable, sad, trouble sleeping, distracted, and a little withdrawn. Those that are thriving are positive, calm, they're performing, they're sleeping well, they're eating normally, and they're in normal social activities. And those that are excelling, cheerful, joyful, energetic, high performance, flow, fully realizing their potential. And as I say, we go up and down this continuum. We might be excelling 1 minute, but we might be surviving in a month's time. And then we may struggle a bit, but then excel again. So it's just being mindful, and you might look at that now and think, oh yeah, I'm sitting in this color or in this kind of box, And naturally, it'd be good to see that change, particularly if you are kind of latter end of this continuum and you wanting to move to the other side. And recognizing if you are worried, if you are irritable, if you're feeling anxious, and what are the triggers for those? What's triggering you to feel like that and to be like that? And once we're aware of that, we can obviously get the right support to be able to move back up that scale and to excelling. But it's not always easy. We can tell ourselves that, but there's a lot more involved to get there. So that just gives you a visual really of that mental health continuum. And then obviously mental health stigma and discrimination here. So again, another way of looking at mental health, we've got mental illnesses particularly. So on the left-hand side, we've got a severe diagnosis, and on the right-hand side, we've got no diagnosis. So when we're in optimal mental well-being, the ideal state of functioning where a person experiences happiness with no mental illness. So generally, we're happy, everything's going as we want, and we're in a great positive frame of mind. So there's minimal mental illness there. Moving back down to the bottom there, there's a subjective state of grief or unhappiness that a person experiences in the absence of any noticeable mental health disorder. So this is where we're now in the minimal mental well-being. So again, we may have an element of grief, unhappiness. We've gone through something really difficult, but there isn't any particular mental health disorder. So it might be that maybe we've lost a loved one, for instance. So we're not going to be in a great frame of mind. We're not really happy, but there isn't a mental health disorder associated to that. Naturally, we will then move up that continuum again to a happier place. On the left-hand side then, so maximum mental illness, individuals have a high sense of subjective well-being despite suffering from mental illness. So these particular people will generally have a mental illness, but they will not allow that to really stop them in their tracks. And they will know it's there, it's in the back of their mind. They know what support they need to have to be able to support them moving forward, but they don't let it affect them, or they don't, not so much let it, but they're conscious of that. And then obviously moving down to the bottom, it's the lowest level of functioning where a person feels languishing and has significant mental illness. So this is someone that knows they've got a mental illness, and naturally you will then see that in their behavior, in their actions, their demeanor. Everything is centered around mental illness, and it will stop them performing, it will stop them doing their day-to-day tasks and activities potentially as well. And this is where they really do need that support and help from professionals to be able to really get them out of that continuum onto the other side. So that's just indicates really where we might be in life, and also where we've got a diagnosable mental illness or not, and what we can potentially do to support that. So what influences mental health? And this is a big one. The joys that is stress. And we've all experienced it to some extent in our lives in different capacities. But it's a big one that I always look at, because naturally, if we concentrate on an element of stress, if we fester, if it ponders on and on, we will naturally then, it'll affect us in other areas of our life, such as our physical well-being, our emotional well-being. So sources of stress can come from various different things. So physical then, it could be that actually you're not feeling very well. It could be aches, pains, just general stresses in ourselves, illness potentially as well. And that can cause us to be really stressed out. It might be that it could be appearance as well. Maybe we're not happy about something physically about ourselves, and that will cause us to feel stressed about it, having to lose weight, wanting to put on weight, whatever that might look like. Emotional then is around things that may affect us, so that anxiety level as well, and cardiovascular potentially as well. So if you are constantly thinking about various things that get you down or trigger you about yourself, you may then become very emotional, and that will then cause the stress to appear in our lives. And then environmental can be anything really. Workplace environment sometimes can really cause us stress. It might be that we don't like the people that are in our office. It might be that there are people that are talking about you behind your back. It could be that there's an element of noise or light. There's no light in your office, and that causes you stress because you need to have some light to function. So lots of different things there. So these are generally the sources of stress that we experience in our lives. And I love this. This is the stress bucket. And if you have an opportunity to do this, it really is so beneficial. So it's basically seeing your life as a bucket. And as you put all those stresses into that bucket, so if you see at the top, you've got anxiety going in, physical decline, hard to maintain self-control, other circumstances, you start to notice that that water bucket, the water in the bucket even, is rising. So that stress is rising and rising and rising. And there are then stresses. It could be workload, illness. We might have had negative feedback from someone, conflict with someone, uncertainty, deadlines that we can't meet, money worries, whatever it might be. We start throwing that into that bucket. And again, the water starts to rise. But if we don't bring in tools to release those stresses, then the bucket's going to overflow, and then we're going to feel overwhelmed, and then we just everything's just on top of us and we can't then do anything. So the little taps that you can see there on the left hand side, we want to loosen them up a little bit and release some of that water. So it's identifying what you can do to release stress. Is it going for a walk? Is it listening to music, going to see friends and family? What generally makes you less stressful? Doing crafts, it could be anything. So in life, when things are getting a little difficult and on top of us, we think of this stress bucket and think of how can I turn the tap and do something that's going to lower that water level back down again. So if you get an opportunity, you can get a lot of these online as well. So you can get a bucket template, or you can actually draw it yourself and start to put things in. What's stressing you out at the moment, and where's your water level at, and what can you do to turn that tap? So think of some of these things like, do you have any evidence to support your feelings? So if you're feeling anxious about something, is it just you telling yourself you're anxious, or is there something that can support that? Something's happened that you go, yeah, actually it is this situation that's really stressed me out. What can you change about that situation? What can't you change about it? What needs urgent attention? So what do you need to deal with right now? And can anyone help you? Okay, so if you get a moment to do this, it's great. Even if you're not feeling very stressed at the moment, you can obviously utilize some of these feelings that sometimes we have, and some of the things we think about that can really be overwhelming. Sometimes we need to just sit down and have a think and go, well, actually, what's making me feel like this? And what can I change about it? And what can't I? And can I get anyone to support me with this? So really love the stress bucket, and hopefully that's something you might be able to utilize. So going on to suicide awareness now. I don't know if I'll leave questions until the very end, but that just boxes off mental health. Naturally, as we go into suicide awareness, we are going into a different topic, but it all interlinks, as I said before. So what is suicide? So suicide is the act or an instance of intentionally killing oneself. Okay. I think over the years, we've obviously seen stories, heard of stories, maybe know of people that have obviously completed that suicide. And I'll tell you about language in a moment, because many of us say commit suicide, they committed suicide, and we shouldn't really be using that word. So I always have to remember this. So we shouldn't use commit suicide or committed suicide, because it comes to the term of committing a crime. And naturally, when someone commits a crime, it's obviously a bad thing. They might go to prison for it. They might, have some other form of consequence of that. So we shouldn't say committed suicide. In most cases, we should say a person has died due to suicide. So just be really mindful of committed or commit. From the training I've received, we shouldn't be using it. So really quick to come out, and I had to stop myself then as well. So death by suicide, completing suicide are some of the things that you can say if you're talking about it. So core beliefs of suicide then. Most people thinking of suicide do not actually want to end their lives. They just want the pain to stop. Whatever it is that they're going through at that moment in time, they just want it to stop. They really do not want to end their life. They do let others know. So it might be that they have spoken out to someone else and said, you know what, I'm depressed at the moment. I'm not really feeling great about myself. I'm going through a really tough time. I'm going through a divorce. It could be whatever it might be. They normally let other people know. And suicide has to be preventable as well. And it's really key. And from a lot of the training I've received, it's really, really interesting how there's a lot that goes into this process before someone even attempts to want to do that. And in some cases, you can really stop it from happening. And there's so many things that we can be doing, but it's making sure that we are aware and we speak to the person about it. And I'll go through this in a moment now. So the suicide ripple effect then. So what do we mean by that? We mean that there are many different elements to suicide. So the first kind of little ripple in the middle are reported suicides. So when it's reported, we don't actually know whether it is a suicide or not. So the coroner would actually have to confirm, yes, it was, or no, it wasn't. So the first kind of ripple in the middle is reported suicide. So how many reported suicides have we heard of? How many are we aware of? And then naturally we start to build upon the ripple. So the next ripple out is unreported suicides. And in most cases, the unreported suicides are more, 5 to 10% more than the actual reported suicides, which indicates how many cases or how many people do we actually know that actually we haven't reported on. And then external to that in our next ripple is suicide behavior. So the risk of death is actually small at this point when people are behaving as if they obviously want to complete that, but they don't. They just have certain behaviors that you might think, oh, you know, they're in a bad place at the moment and things aren't going very well. So they may exhibit certain behavior like depression, like wanting to stay away from people and just hiding themselves away. We then have thinking of suicide. And this is just people that just think, oh, you know what, I really just don't want to be here. And it's just a thought. They don't do anything more with it. It's just a little thought in their head that makes them think, yeah, things aren't great. Do I really want to be here? And then you then have the last ripple, which is affected by suicide. And this is the loved ones. This is, you know, friends of a person that obviously has thought about it, is thinking about it, exhibits the behavior, and in most cases obviously then carries out that act as well. So those are the ripples of general suicide, and as we go out and the ripples do extend, we don't really know the numbers, particularly if we're looking at kind of statistics of the UK, and I got some stats from 2018 in the UK that actually once we get to affected by suicide, we don't even know how many people are affected, because we obviously don't ask people, and we may not know, and they might not tell people either. So as we go out on the ripples, the numbers are reduced to a certain extent, because we just don't know people's thoughts, behaviours, and whether that's something they really want to be doing. So that was suicide ripple effect. We then now have the continuum. So how does someone get from the point of being okay to a point of attempting? So they may have thoughts initially about it, which then will develop into planning and preparing, which will then go into attempting. So when we're looking at the factors here, we've got biological factors. So this could be age, gender, sexual orientation. So 6% of trans, lesbians, gays think about suicide due to the lack of acceptance of themselves and who they are. So we tend to find that sexual orientation tends to be a big factor here. When we look at psychological factors, we're thinking of depression, anxiety, low resilience, low self-esteem, and that tends to be quite a big factor here. Past history, so someone that's gone through abuse, someone that has an illness, injury, maybe looked after someone, formerly looked after by someone that has been affected by it potentially as well. And then current life events and situations could be redundancy, bereavements, end of a relationship, high alcohol use, various different things. So these factors generally will impact the thought element, the planning to preparing, and then obviously the attempting to actually complete that suicide. But again, many of these people do not want to end their lives. So they have to be in they would have been planning for some time to actually then go and do it. And this is after maybe no one actually haven't been able to help them potentially as well, because they actively do talk to other people about it. They never normally keep it to themselves. So naturally they would have said it to someone. So the suicide safety guide then, so these are the steps. So step 1 is recognize and ask. So if someone is exhibiting behaviors, maybe they're withdrawn, maybe they're upset, they've maybe mentioned that they've got an element of depression, potentially they're going through something traumatic, recognize and ask the question. So you could actually ask them, are you thinking of, or are you thinking about suicide? And in most cases, if they are, they will actively say, yes, they are. So really important to ask that initial question and not being frightened to, particularly if they are exhibiting many of those behaviours, especially around anxiety and depression and the factors around those. Step 2 is listen and explore. So show you care by listening to that person, learn about what's causing their pain right now, and just sit and listen. Explore options. So talk things through. Many of us on here, and hopefully people that are watching as well, whether you're a coach or not, it's actually sitting there and asking the questions, find out what's going on, and explain how it's not the time to really be making a major decision to, whether that's to end their life, to attempt. They really need to explore some of the options first. So it might be that you can offer help or support, or actively listen to them on a regular basis as well, and find the support for them. In most cases, when you are listening and exploring, they will tell you what you need to know to hopefully then take the right steps in being able to help them as well. So step 3 is safeguarding. So discuss what they need to stay safe now. So are they in an environment that's not right for them? Are they, we tend to find that a lot of people that are thinking maybe at home, have a look at that area as well. Are they safe in that area? Have they got potential things that they may use should they have the thoughts? So think of ways in which you can protect them against any threats or their safety. Build on their strengths and identify who else can support them. So maybe they've got a really close friend, maybe they've got a family member that they know they can go to for anything. It might be that you then have to contact these individuals somehow to try and get the help that they need. And obviously externally to that, I'll run through some of the charities as well that help people also. So Stephen Covey actually said, seek first to understand, then to be understood. So understand the situation, listen, learn, find out what it is that you need to learn, make sure that person is safe, and find the right support for them. And they actively have to do this too. They have to actively be willing to want the support as well. But as soon as you listen to them, you will find that they will actively talk to you, and then you can make decisions with them, ideally, to move them forward in a positive manner. So signs to look out for then that may trigger a thought for you to think, oh, this person's not in the right place. Feeling anxious or worried, feeling depressed or unhappy, emotional outbursts, quiet or withdrawn, weight or appetite changes, sleep problems, substance abuse, feeling guilty or worthless, and changes in behavior or feelings. Okay, so they're just some of the things that you should look out for. So when someone is in this state of mind of, do I live, do I not? we basically want to put a pause to that. And this is one thing to really remember here, is we don't want them to make that decision that tomorrow actually it all ends and I really just can't deal with the pain anymore. We want to put a pause. So if we can pause them in their thought process by listening to them, by removing anything that could be unsafe for them, by getting the support and just being there for them, we can actually prevent that step over to them actually taking their life. Pause them making that final decision. Because in most cases, as I say, they've been thinking about it for some time potentially, and naturally we just don't want them stepping over the line of actually carrying it out. So be that pause. That's the most important message here. Be that pause for someone. Make sure that we can have some form of influence in that we can get the help and support they need before they take the action, which is not where we want them to be. And make them accountable as well. So it might be you say something like this. So if you agree to put your decision on hold for now, shall we talk about what we can do together to help you stay safe? Okay, and it could be a simple sentence like that, where you're saying, pause, let's get you some help and support, and just hold fire. And you'll naturally find that obviously people will be a little more willing to want to get help and support, because ultimately they don't want to end their life. Okay, so that's the pause. And then self-care. So for you, your friends, your family, your clients. So checking in audit is checking in on the person. So checking how they're doing, and it might be a quick message. You might want to say, you know, how are you feeling today? How are things? You might want to visit them. You tend to find people that maybe in a state of mind will not eat, drink properly. So it might be touching base and bringing them some food, for instance. So check in on them, just check how they are, how they're feeling. And then the life wheel, and it's something I normally do in some of my training, and it's a wheel of everything that we have in our life. And we will just basically review where we're at with them, whether that's in career, whether it's in kind of relationships, children, where it might be. Just rate yourself on them. How happy are you in those areas right now? And if you know that in certain areas you might have a dip, what's causing for that to happen? And can you identify it before it actually gets to a stage of it really taking over your life? So yes, those are the two real key things here for self-care. Checking in and for yourself and for your friends and family, look at your life wheel. Where are you at with things in life right now? How happy are you? Unhappy? What triggers you? And what can you do to change that? Right, bear with me. I'll answer your question in a minute, Victoria. So seeking support. So Samaritans, in actual fact, we've had donations already for Samaritans in memory of Mark as well. So Samaritans are a great support, and obviously Mind as well, for better mental health. So they're two of the key charities that you can contact should you or someone around you be suffering right now. So just a few last things. This is actually from the Action for Happiness, and it's been July. It's jumped back up July, and these are some of the things that you could potentially do on a day-to-day basis. So first of the month was take a small step to help overcome a problem or worry. Adopt a growth mindset. Be willing to ask for help when you need it. Find something to look forward to today. And they've got one for every month. So it might be that you download it off their website and you put it up and you can carry out the activity for every day. That naturally gets you into a positive frame of mind and positive mental health and well-being too. So these are really good to keep us going, really. And then just sustaining a healthy body and mind. And food is important to fuel us. So making sure you're eating good food, healthy food, that will fuel your body efficiently. Sleep, really important. Good sleep actually fosters both mental and emotional resilience. find out what's right for you. So a lot of people say, hey, you should have 8 hours sleep, but actually that might not work for you. You might have 8 hours sleep and be tired in the morning. So what's the right amount for you? Find that and be able to try and get that amount of sleep each night, every night even. Music. So listening to music actually releases dopamine, which is the feel-good chemical. So dopamine is actually high, it's by 9% higher for those that listen to music. So naturally you're in a better frame of mind, positive and happy place when you listen to music. So do a bit more of that. Crafts, for people that do like to do a craft or like to explore them. Crafts actually lowers level of mental health, and then higher levels of mental function and life satisfaction as well. So by actually taking on a craft and doing it, it will lower your levels of mental stress. And I know that I make handmade cards, and I do that myself, and I dance as well. So physical activity there as well, going out for a walk, even 10-minute walk of brisk walking increases mental alertness, energy, and positive moods as well. So taking up those activities, going for a nice walk as well, in nature, and then drinking water, most importantly, making sure you're getting enough water, and again, fueling your body in that way too. So these are just some of the things you can do to increase on your general well-being. And I love this quote. It's eat like you love yourself, move like you love yourself, speak like you love yourself, and act like you love yourself. So really just embracing the element of self-love for yourself, and doing the things that make you happy and that make you smile, and doing that every day, whatever that looks like, whether it's reading a book that you enjoy, having your favorite coffee, doing something that lowers your stress levels, a craft, going for a walk, whatever it might be, do something for yourself. And then just thinking positive as well, really important here. We think 60 to 70,000 thoughts a day. 90% of what we think is the same as the day before. So if you're in a negative frame of mind, you are going to continuously think of negative things every day until you break the pattern. So positivity, as much as you can every day, will naturally make you be positive in yourself. And that will then run through to others as well. And then just one thing for you to think about as we close off. What one thing will you do today to positively impact your mental health? And before we go, if someone, well, all of you actually can write in the comment box what that's going to be, that will be amazing. And it will then bring me to a close. So, and I'll answer your question as well, Victoria. So, any questions? So, Victoria, you've put a question on here. Do you have any advice for people who are carrying guilt, who may have tried to help a loved one, but the person still went ahead with it? So this is the element of the loved ones that are left behind, following on from someone they know that has actually gone ahead and has died through suicide. The guilt is one thing that naturally we end up holding on to. We think about it, we think, could I have done more? I should have really spoken to that person, I should have contacted them, I could have helped them. Naturally, that person has gone ahead and sadly taken their life. And as much as we may feel that guilt of having to do more, wanting to do more, that person may have not been in the right frame of mind to have accepted any help and support as well. And that's something we do have to think about. In most cases, they do want support, but in some cases, they're far beyond that. So if we tried to do something or wanted to do something, it may not have made a difference to that person, depending on where they were with it and how long they might have been feeling like that as well. So it's something that we naturally have to, I guess, it's there, it's not going to go away, but how can we nurture that in a different way? What potentially have you done maybe in the past to help that person? Nurture the guilt in a different way. So if you're able to turn that around, and think of maybe the things that you have been able to do, and not so much of the guilt of, oh, but I should have done this, I should have done this, I should have been there, I should have, because it's something we can't change. As sad as it is, we can't change it. So how can we then nurture those guilt, the elements of guilt and the thoughts of guilt, into something that's a little more positive, bearing in mind the situation isn't, to really support ourselves, because if we continue thinking about the guilt, it's naturally going to carry on. We're going to continue thinking about it, which will then affect our own mental health. And this is why many people that experience it end up going through some form of element of depression as well, because they are overthinking that element of guilt. So try and nurture the guilt in a way that you're able to spin it around a little bit, and think of all the other things that maybe you potentially have done to support other people as well, and all the amazing things you might be doing every day. Hopefully that answers your question. So some of the things you're doing then today: sit in the sunshine. Yeah, that's going to be me. Meeting friends, swimming in the sea. Mark, I'm very jealous. Buy flowers, dog walk in the woods. Fantastic. That all sounds amazing. I am going to be getting some sunshine too, which naturally makes me feel better. So that's what I'm going to be doing. Thank you for your input. And this is just my details, my website, and obviously email address as well, if anyone has any questions. I don't know if anyone does have any questions. I'll maybe stop screen sharing now.